question. So let's
That
hold
is
it.
big, yeah.
Let's hold it off, and then Jim, maybe you could give us your view.
Well, I think I probably agree more with John's approach, but I mean, I don't know that there's that much conflict with Toby's. I mean, I what I prefer, I definitely you can think of consciousness as we typically do think of it as some kind of subjective awareness, right? It could be awareness of external entities as well as our own internal thoughts and self-generated objects, for example, in dreams. Obviously, you think that certainly seems like to be the top of consciousness. As far as well, maybe it's not the top. Maybe there is more a transcendent consciousness or a cosmic consciousness in addition to that some people have been able to experience either through their ability or effort in some way. But I think sitting below that consciousness is in fact of other realms. Almost you can almost think of an iceberg sort of thing. I mean, these lower realms, I think, are to some degree even probably present in humans. But I think what I'd like to emphasize is the sort of the continuity between life and consciousness. And one of my posts was that the algorithm nature of life. I think I forget the exact name of the post right now, but that the Paul Davies post where basically talks about the origin of life being where suddenly matter begins to store information and begins to be able to take that information and direct or in a causal way the actions of the organism. So that is sort of like sort of how he defines the beginning of life. Well, if you think of life is that, then if you just think of consciousness is just a continuation of that development. It's a continuation of our ability to gain information about the environment, to manage the internal state of the organism, and as well as eventually with the consciousness we have, we're able to direct nature externally to our organism also. And so I like to emphasize the continuity of consciousness with life, and for all I know, it may turn out when we understand the beginnings of life, we may understand that there's a continuity from some even lower level at the quantum level or something of that something like that.
Have you heard Jim about it? Like, I think I might have brought this guy up to you before. He's a neuroscientist, Antonio Damasio. Have you heard of him?
Yeah. I think I bought his book, and I looked a little bit, and I haven't really focused on it enormously.
Yeah, I was watching. He has a thing on TED. He did a TED conference a while back. I think it might have been 2011 about this question. And he's a neuroscientist, so he's approaching it from that direction. But he was doing something. He was talking about the brainstem. And what he was saying is that, okay, well, what's consciousness? And the only thing he could kind of define it in a negative. So he said, we know, like when a person is under deep anesthesia, deeply asleep, dead, you know what I mean? They don't have consciousness. So it's whatever it is, it's not that. So it has to do with this flow of the mind that happens from the moment we really wake up and are actually awake. You know what I mean? Until somehow that system shuts itself off. And he was talking about these people who had a brain injury to a very narrow part of their brainstem. It was a very, very narrow part, very narrow specific part. And when that was damaged, they were comatose and in no way conscious. That is, there could be brain activity, but if they were brought back, there would be no recollection of that activity. So it's like they had no access to the fact that this activity was taking place in their brain. And then he said that for But in this other section, if you had right next to it, there was another section on the brainstem, and if that section was damaged, you had a different type of experience where you were paralyzed. You were completely paralyzed. You could do nothing at all with your body. Your total body was paralyzed, and yet you were conscious, right? So it was like very narrow scope. You damage one, no consciousness. Damage the other, you're conscious, but you don't. And his whole theory, and he's looking at it totally in a biological sense, is that consciousness is about the brain's kind of like regulation of the body. Like it has to do with this feedback mechanism where the brain is kind of looking at the body and kind of like trying to figure out about the body and then outside of the body. So it's like it arises because of basically feedback from yourself to both your brain to your own body, and then kind of like ripples out from there to body to the world, right? I mean, and I don't know, I don't know if that leaves room or not for any kind of numinous element to it. I don't know. It's like we're well, maybe I should just leave that there and then maybe go to Toby, because Toby, you don't believe in any kind of numinous realm, right?
No, I don't believe in it, although I don't exclude its possibility either. I think it's another one of those things that is really hard to either prove or disprove. So,
but it has to be relevant, though. It has to be relevant. That's not necessarily provable. Completely in agreement there, but yeah.
But what do y'all think of this the Persinger experiment that I posted on my blog? Right?
Remind us
I
about
think you responded to that, right, Toby?
Yeah.
Okay, remind us about it there, Jim.
Well, I mean, basically, Persinger has done a lot of experimentation with. Now, admittedly, this experiment is a little bit rigged up, but it certainly indicates something, unless it's just a hoax or a complete misinterpretation of data. But what Persinger did was he's done a lot of experimentation with exposing the brain to magnetic fields, and he's done a lot of work on temporal lobe, and he was exposing the temporal lobe to magnetic fields, and a high percentage of people will have almost religious experiences and things of that nature when they do that. So for a long time, I thought of him as sort of a person who was the brain, and all this stuff is in the brain and in physiology. But then he did an experiment where he sort of exposed people to a magnetic field, and it's a particular type of rotating magnetic field at a particular rate. And he took two groups of people and put them in two different rooms, and he was monitoring their brain waves. And he, on one group of people, he started showing flashing lights, and he looked at the brainwave patterns of them seeing the flashing lights, and then you could see the same brainwave patterns in the people in the other room who were not exposed to the flashing lights. So the hypothesis being is that there really is some kind of potential communication outside the brain, physiological brain. By the way, I don't think this necessarily says that consciousness lies completely outside the brain, and that we just tap into it, right? I just believe, but I do believe that there may be boundaries beyond the brain, right, that are involved in this.
Yeah, but it would seem to me that to hold tight to the hypothesis would require like multiple verification. You know what I mean? Like you're like this is one set of experiments out of a series of experiments that they've done on ESP and things like that for generation now, and they haven't come up with anything, right? So we got this example, and the thing is that can you build out from it? Can you prove? Can you what I mean? Can you replicate this experiment multiple times, right?
Actually, I think this was replicated 3 times in the actual article, right? And I'm not sure whether it's replicated by anybody other than Persinger.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I have to go back and look at the article. But it's and I think he's gone on with some other things that are somewhat indicative of the same behavior.
And there's indications. There's indications that there could possibly be components to consciousness that are interactive with the cognitive function of the brain, and that it's entirely possible that the functioning of the brain is required in order to perceive the consciousness in the first place. That's all still speculative, but it's still certainly in the mix. It's clearly the brain is interactive, not just with the thoughts and memories and the brain function, but it's also interactive with feelings and emotions and ideas, which all those things are completely incorporeal. You can't, hold up in your hand an idea and say, there it is, this idea is in my hand. It does exist, but it certainly isn't physically or temporally observable or provable. We certainly know that they're